Monsieur Neuvillette, the Hydro Dragon sovereign of Teyvat. His full origin, backstory, and lore. Our first ever playable dragon sovereign, but he won't be the last, as the dragons will be reclaiming Teyvat, their homeland, from the usurpers, Celestia and the 7 Archons. Let's break it down. He is an extremely interesting character to talk about because he is the first sovereign that we really get to interact with on a frequent basis. The only other sovereign we've got to see and talk to is Apep, and Apep appears to be the original Dendro sovereign because she alludes to have participated in the big war in Celestia many years ago. Neuvillette, however, is really actually not that old, and he's not the original Hydro Dragon sovereign, but a reincarnation in human form, and only really recently got his full powers back after Focalors sacrificed herself to do so. But let's start from the beginning. The Hydro Sovereign, one of the Hydro Dragons and 7 rulers of the Bishops, with sovereignty over water. Obviously we know he was the Dragon of Water. We don't know the identity or the name of the original Hydro Dragon Sovereign, but obviously that individual was a Dragon Lord who ruled over the 7 nations of the old world. According to Bishop legend, the original Hydro Dragon was the beating heart that ruled over the Primordial Sea, and obviously alongside its other sovereigns went to war with the Primordial One and was eventually defeated, not killed, but defeated. It goes without saying that the Dragon Sovereigns have long lifespans, and we're not exactly sure the fate of the original Hydro Dragon, but it obviously perished at some point in time, and the Primordial One took a portion of each sovereign and bestowed its power among the Archons. There was a prophecy in Enkanomia as well, one of the old civilizations of Teyvat, that a new Hydro Dragon will be born in human form, as these Dragon Lords require a pure vessel. Obviously we know this prophecy eventually came true, as the Hydro Dragon incarnated in the form of Neuvillette, the Eudix of Fontaine. It also goes without saying that the dragons probably resided over the same regions, corresponding with their elements that the Archons do now, hence why we see Apep in Sumeru and Neuvillette in Fontaine. The original Hydro Dragon was probably in Fontaine as well, because there was a legend passed down long before Neuvillette was even born that when the Hydro Dragon cries, it rains. The skies would cloud up and it would pour rain, and that they would shout for the Hydro Dragon to stop crying so that the skies would clear up. This has been confirmed as we've seen Neuvillette cry in the Archon quest and it starts raining, as well as in his own story quest. There seems to be a lot of debate amongst the community how the Dragon Sovereigns actually measure up to the Archons in raw power and strength. The Sovereigns do not possess the level of authority and power they once had. However, Neuvillette might just be the most powerful being in Teyvat, not residing in Celestia because he has the full power of the dragons restored, but we'll get into that in a second. I do not think Neuvillette to be much older than 500 years, and Neuvillette himself has little to no memories of his birth or the Primordial Sea, and is said to actually have less control over the Primordial Sea than the original Hydro Dragon did, probably due to his inexperience and age. And for Neuvillette to actually get his authority and elemental powers fully restored, the Archon would have to bestow that power back to them, and that elemental authority. But this is something Neuvillette did not want, as this would mean the death of the Hydro Archon. Now, as for Neuvillette's beginnings in Teyvat, we don't have a clear-cut answer, but I think that Neuvillette was actually groomed and raised to actually fulfill the succession at the end of the Archon quest when Focalors actually sacrifices herself and gives that authority back. It would seem that it had to have been premeditated for 500 plus years in order for that to actually work and be pulled off. She seemed to actually know everything about him and knew exactly what she needed to do in that moment, whereas Neuvillette didn't really seem to know that she was going to die, hence his reaction and his tears. Focalors was once an Oceanid, an attendant to Egeria, the original Hydro Archon, that was dead during the Cataclysm. I speculate that she found Neuvillette reborn, probably in the Primordial Sea, maybe even as a baby or young boy, and pretty much started this 500-year-long plan to fool the Heavenly Principles, to ultimately give authority back to a dragon, something that was taken away by Celestia, and orchestrated to have him raised in secret and brought him up in Fontaine. for him to learn everything there is to know about Fontaine, its people, and the idea of justice, the nation's theme. We know after Egeria's death and Focalors became the new Hydro Archon, she split herself into two, her human side being Furina, who would be the fake Hydro Archon for 500 years, could have possibly even meddled with Neuvillette's memories of her, using her Hydro authority. Something else that sort of points towards this is that Neuvillette remembers both Egeria and Focalors, but doesn't actually remember meeting them. He truly did believe that Furina was the actual Archon that he now serves. But there is no way that Focalors didn't already know about Neuvillette concocting this plan, so I do think his memories were altered in some way in order for this to actually be pulled off. Everyone would have to be fooled by this ruse. And Furina was aware of all this as well, and elevates Neuvillette to Chief Justice after 100 years on his own. But not only were they concocting this 500-year-long plan to give authority back to the true ruler of the Hydro region, the Hydro Sovereign, I do think that part of making him Chief Justice and incorporating him into the livelihoods of every Fontainian is his inability to relate to human emotions, Neuvillette's loneliness. So I do think him playing a very integral role in Fontaine helped with not only the plan, but to actually incorporate him into the lives of everyday Fontainians. And he is a very renowned and very well respected person in Fontaine. People adore him and they respect his opinion. The perfect plan to groom a great leader and the future of the Hydro Nation for when the time is right to give that authority back to him. Neuvillette also has a very soft spot for the Melusine, and they all view him as a father figure, and he fiercely protects them. And any matters that have to do with mistreating a Melusine, he will see to it personally. Obviously from here, we know how this whole thing plays out. Focalors, with her deception, would save the people of Fontaine from a looming prophecy, and Neuvillette admitting and sacrificing herself to return Neuvillette to his original power as the Hydro Sovereign and granting him back his authority over Hydro. He admits that he was deceived and was both saddened and shocked by her self-sacrifice. Indeed, having seen humanity positively, Neuvillette used his full restored powers to save the people, and it goes without saying, he will be the greatest ruler that Fontaine could possibly have. With that said, Neuvillette obviously opposes the heavenly principles, and by extension, the 7 Archons, as they usurped the authority of the dragons that once ruled over Teyvat. I wonder now that he has his authority back if he has his full memories of all that has happened, and even though he's a reincarnation of the original Hydro Sovereign, if he inherits those memories as well of the old world and everything that happened up until this point. We also seen that Morax actively avoided him in the Lantern Rite cutscene when the Fontainian characters showed up in Liyue. Similar to a Pep, I'm sure he has no love for the New World, the Archons, and everyone that usurped his fellow drag, but he does have respect for Archons like Barbatos and highly respects Lesser Lord Kusanali for her duties. But recognizing the Archons and understanding that they might not actually be the reason why the dragons were usurped doesn't mean that Neuvillette has forgotten, and from his own voice lines he plans to pass judgment upon all of them, which will determine if they are guilty. And if the Archons think they're gonna sit comfortably in control of the 7 nations, they have another thing coming. Unlike a Pep though, Neuvillette is very level-headed and doesn't hold humanity accountable, and actually views them quite highly. After all, humanity aren't the ones that stole the dragon's world, they just live in it. As far as we know, they had nothing to do with stealing and usurping the old world from the dragons, so he harbors no resentment towards them. The same cannot be said for a Pep though. A Pep keeps to herself. He is a very kind and gentle person, and very level-headed, critical thinking, and very fair. Not a single person in Fontaine has anything bad to say about him, and he's very highly respected even outside of Teyvat, even outside of Fontaine. But we've seen even before his authority was returned how powerful he actually was even prior to this, taking down Child as he was about to take his foul legacy form, and snuffed him out quickly in order to protect the people at the courtroom. He also helped us defeat and contain the all-devouring narwhal. But now that he's at full power, I am very curious to see just how strong he is. Because he has his full authority returned, I'm sure he has to be the strongest sovereign in Teyvat right now that we know of, because we do not know of any sovereigns that have their authority returned right now. And unlike a Pep, who was probably alive during everything that we've seen. And because he's not the original sovereign like Apep is, did not see the old world be usurped and ransacked, and did not participate in the big war in the heavens when Nibelung the Dragon King returned, Neuvillette is not bitter towards the new residents of this new world. And why I think he's the perfect candidate to lead Fontaine forward. Because we know where Teyvat's story is leading. The dragons are reclaiming Teyvat. It is their birthright. They are meant to lead and be the rulers of the 7 nations. That is in their blood and how it's supposed to be. The world will never be quite right until that happens, like fitting a puzzle piece in the spot it doesn't belong. Until the sovereigns are all reinstated in their respective elements and regions, Teyvat will never thrive to its full potential. But I hope you enjoyed the video and this breakdown of Neuvillette. We'll be going over La Senora next. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think we'll get more sovereigns very soon in Natlan and possibly Shesnaya? I honestly do think they're going to be popping up more and more as we're getting closer to the end of this game's story. But thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, help grow the channel. I appreciate you all watching this far. And as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.